Good morning, Victor! Welcome to the DJ Smooth Breakfast! Welcome, 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 welcome!
Smooth, don't bring 10% to Rosebank. Yeah, that was scary.
It was scary, but you're awake now.
Sorry. Well, look, you know what? It's show business. It's show business. I'm very impressed to see this place.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate it. And thank you for waking up so early for us.
No, and that's why I came in. I thought, let me come go and see this. This is the future, I must tell you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. We really appreciate it.
Tell us a bit about Africa is Open for Business, your book, that speaks really, it's nullifying that myth that the borders are closed, it's hard to do business on the continent.
Yeah.
Why did you want to write this book?
Because Africans have to tell their own stories. If you go to any international medium, they will be talking about the starving Africa, violence, corruption. I'm not saying those things don't exist. But I'm saying if we have over 1 billion people on a continent, they can't all be about starvation, corruption, and AIDS. There has to be something to offer. Secondly, it's business. It's amazing how much we'll spend the whole day tweeting about somebody's political scandal, but we don't want to find out. There's a business on every block. There's entrepreneurship on the continent, second to none. There are innovations that are being exported to the rest of the world from the continent. Now, why not write about it? But it's because I traveled to the continent helping companies expand their empires into the continent. I realized for 10 years, 2003 to 2013, I had been talking about this every week. But if I didn't write about it, I'll be living on a radio show. And people need books travel sometimes better than radio shows and vice versa. So I had to put it down because if we don't document, as they say, you'll continue to say we're not telling our stories. But who should tell it if we don't?
I want to talk to you about one of the stories that are making headlines across the continent. In Nigeria, the Minister of State Petroleum Resources, Dr. Ibe Kachigu, had said that Nigeria will begin to export refined petrol and other petrochemical products within the next 4 years. Why hasn't it been done sooner?
Exactly. 56 or 60 years ago, when oil was discovered in Nigeria, it became the curse. And the reason I believe this man now, who's the Minister of Petroleum, is because he's the very man who turned around NNPC. NNPC is like, I can't say Petro SA, but something akin to it. But it's the National Nigerian Petroleum Corporation, which is responsible for structuring the industry. Now, it hasn't been done because the people who have been running this industry, the Shell corporations and all that, are not African countries. And their interests were not in building the economy of Nigeria, but building their own international empire. And unfortunately, on the other side, the leadership was happy to get on board and abet that corruption. At the moment, here is the minister, including President Buhari, who I criticize for being so far from home for a long time. But one thing he has done is that he has managed to restructure the oil industry. The second reason is now the richest man in Africa, Aliko Dangote, is building a refinery. So it's not just talk. So the ability to export refined crude depends on capacity in Nigeria. And if it's being built by Africa's biggest industrialist in any language, Aliko Dangote, it will happen. Whether it will happen in 4 years or not, I don't know. But I'm glad that finally Nigeria, Africa's largest producer of oil, will become the exporter of refined products.
That's market disruption right there.
Kenya just became the third country in the world to nullify a presidential election result. And, you know, they're saying the upcoming elections have to take place within the next 60 days.
Yeah. And I was there when the voting happened. I'm not going to lie. I suspected something like this was going to happen, but it had not happened before, so I wasn't going to be that prophet of doom. I think it's good for Kenya that if there's sloppiness in the IEBC, the equivalent of IEC here, and I saw a bit of that because you see these things, ballot papers that should be stamped in a certain way, not stamped in a certain way, but they were going through anyway. So I was not an official observer. I was just traveling with somebody who was showing me this shouldn't be here. But because she was more a supporter of Raila Odinga, I didn't believe her. I thought, this is a very tribal country. Maybe she's just unhappy. And then the counting started, and there were videos circulating of people counting in the most bizarre way. So if there are irregularities, and it sounds like here they were, I believe is better because Kenya is a very sensitive country. You remember in 2007 when there was a real contestation, over 1,005 people died. Already here more than 20 people died in places that were supporters of Raila Odinga. I think it's a good landmark. I think African powerful people, if they believe they can rig elections, they should know the courts are going to be independent. This is the same thing that apartheid started crumbling in South Africa when judges refused to hand down sentences that apartheid government wanted. You remember even in South Africa with Nkandla, when the courts started ruling against the president, the country started realizing, listen, you can't just be all powerful and do things. So I think if it's good for Kenya, it will be. My question though is, will the Kenyans vote on issues?